This is a video from my friend Kurt. I thought I'd make it public just to, in case there's something others might glean from this information. This is a Southwest Technical preamp 198A. It uses the famous modules. This little gain module. He was convinced that you could do better with individual transistors than you could with a op amp. And at the time, it was true. And whether it's true today is debatable. You'd probably lose that debate. Anyway, this is the preamp he came up with to go along with the Tigers that I have. Very low distortion. It's actually sonically a good preamp, but and even ergonomics aren't that bad. The problem with it is just that it's too lightweight to be push button, especially for these input selectors, which are kind of tough. Your bass treble and your input selectors were all push button, and the whole chassis was too light, you know, to really be able to push the buttons without sliding it across the table, and depending on what it's mounted on. But that was really the biggest problem with it. It has a nice wooden cover, which I still have. It's just cheap pressed wood with a lamination on it. It looks pretty decent. But yeah, making a real nice heavy cover would be the solution for this amp. Something that would have some actual weight to it too, you know, and keep the whole thing anchored down. This is the early version, not the earliest version. The earliest version had only 7 transistors. It had instead of a double-ended input, it had a single-ended input. What else can I tell you about this preamp? Pretty good preamp. Mine isn't working right now. I really need to go over it, and my friend Kurt's been going over his for the same, well, to get his working too. So I'm inspired. I need to get this thing working. I haven't played LPs or CDs in a long time. In the latest revisions of this preamp, Daniel Meyer, is the he I'm going to be mentioning, he took out the transformer and put it in a wall wart, actually, to keep the AC away from all the sensitive phono inputs and all that stuff. So it's right on top of the phono preamp. Actually, phono preamp's on this side, isn't it? No? Yes. At any rate, just to keep the transformer out here, he moved the transformer to a wall wart, and he also added 2 transistors, almost like an afterthought, because he changed very little otherwise. He left the Zerners where they were and the caps where they were, and just cobbled in a couple more transistors for regulators. I'll show you that circuit in a second here. And it was kind of a half-hearted attempt. If you read the original article for this preamp, he stressed how the preamp didn't need a regulated power supply. I guess he felt pressured to add it at the end. Of course, it's always good to have a low impedance for your power source, for your DC power source. And audiophiles are really into that nowadays, keeping the impedance in the whole power supply system real low. So there's less, it's a more stable, like a rock stable power supply that way. So hanging up in my audio video closet is this little DAC that I did a video on a while back. I'll put a link to it somewhere. And that's been driving my Tigers directly, my power amps. It's a little dark in there, but there's power amps there. And it was a temporary situation, but I just never, there's so many things when they work somewhat acceptable, I never get around to doing anything else about them. Kind of like my hot tub and other projects that are stalled around here. And if you did use some of these alternate holes, moved your ground maybe here, you could use these 2 holes where the Zerner was for this 20 UF cap instead of having it tacked in back. Then use this other hole for the wire 3. And, you know, this spot roughly for ground. But whatever. Lots of opportunities. Pretty simple project, really. Almost as simple as simply replacing the transistors.